Davey Do.
Yes, sir.
You know how we've had a water problem here in the Rio Grande Valley for many, many years?
Oh, yeah.
As far as you can probably remember as well.
Did
you know that Utah had a huge problem with the lack of rain and how they were having a problem in the Great Salt Lake Basin?
Had no idea.
Yes. It was actually so bad. A few years ago, I had some friends that lived in Utah that said they were thinking about moving because they didn't know where they were going to get their water from. It was that bad. But cloud seeding seems to be a thing on a lot of people's minds.
That was a hoax.
Cloud seeding seems to be a thing. So let's talk about that.
All right.
Our guest on 710 KURV from the American Conservation Coalition, Isaiah Menning, joins us now, and he's got a opinion piece in the Deseret News saying that cloud seeding can make the deserts bloom. And China's taken advantage of this. So let's start off at the beginning with some definitions here. What is cloud seeding and how does it work?
Well, hey, Zach, thanks very much for having me on. I'm Isaiah Menning, like you mentioned, with American Conservation Coalition. I think it's really important to get what this technology is and get it right. So what cloud seeding is it's a way essentially to squeeze out more water from clouds that would already be precipitating rain or snow. And so how it works in Utah is the state's been doing this for literally 70 years, since the 1950s. They take planes, and then sometimes there are ground-based operations that put silver iodide and other kinds of precipitants into the air, into these clouds that are coming over. And essentially that helps the clouds squeeze out more water than would otherwise come out. And then those clouds dump out more snow. We've seen actually a 15% increase in the amount of snow that you can get from a cloud with cloud seeding. And then you provide more water for the Great Salt Lake and other water uses where I'm from in Utah.
And just to clarify, it kind of sounds like the clouds already need to exist in order for this to work, right? It doesn't just generate clouds?
Exactly. So there's no cloud generation that's happening here. What cloud seeding does is actually mimics the natural process where you have dust that goes up into the air and then into a cloud, and that's how it rains. But essentially what you're doing here is you're mimicking that process to just make more water. You're not controlling the weather. You're just increasing the amount of rain and snow that you can get out of any cloud.
This is Davis Rankin. This will sound hostile, but it's not. If it works, how come nobody else is doing it, or it's not being done like universally in the U.S.?
Sure. So it does work, and that's why China's putting so much money into it. In fact, China's eating our lunch in this area, because they understand that water is a critical resource. And increasingly, other states are starting to do it too and are following Utah's lead. And I think it's really critical that we as a country don't fall behind in the rest of the world as they're taking advantage of cloud seeding technology. We're actually seeing other states pay the state of Utah millions of dollars per year to increase their cloud seeding, and other states are looking into doing it more and more. Places like Idaho, places like Arizona, even places like Texas are considering cloud seeding as a really cost-effective way to increase the water supply.
Is there a finite amount of water? If everybody gets into the water seeding business, are we going to run out of water?
That's a great question. So actually how the technology works is it squeezes out more water out of the clouds. And so you might think if you're getting more water out of clouds in a place like Utah, then maybe downwind they're not getting as much water. And that's actually not the case. You actually see more water being deposited downwind of where the clouds are seeded. And that's for a simple reason, is that you can essentially prime these clouds to just give off more water. And that water would, and others, if it wasn't seeded, it would simply evaporate into the air and then go back into the ocean. And so what we're doing is essentially taking out water from what would otherwise go in the ocean and just depositing it on land and not actually decreasing in any way the water that's deposited on land.
There is a fixed amount of water in the world. We haven't lost liquid since.
No. I mean, yes, we fixed amount of water in the world. It's a question of whether it's going to be in freshwater reserves or it's going to be in the ocean where we can't use it. Yep.
Joining us on 710 KURV is Isaiah Menning, the External Affairs Director at the American Conservation Coalition, and we're talking about cloud seeding right now on 710 KURV. So, how much does cloud seeding cost? What does it take to get it to work, and how do you apply it to other states?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Cloud seeding costs, based on its use in Utah, only about $3 per acre foot of water. And an acre foot is an acre of land 1 feet deep. So that's a lot of water that you can get for really a low amount of cost. That's how much it costs in Utah. And when you compare that to other kinds of states or other kinds of water reclamation technology, it's extremely cheap. So desalination, right? That's part of the solution, but it costs on average $800 to $1,400 per acre foot of water. Cloud seeding is multiple tens of times more cost effective than desalination or processes like recycled water, where you can take sewage and turn it into usable water. And what cloud seeding does is it makes that water available on the landscape, so you can increase the amount of wetland habitat and farming that's available without just making more fresh water at near a coast with desalination.
What if you have a challenge like a lot of times we have really, really, really dry summers to the point where we don't even have clouds. We have a lot of humidity, right? But we don't have a lot of clouds.
Right. That's a good question. So currently the technology is not able to make new clouds. You need existing clouds. And so that's why this is part of the solution. And in the state of Utah, this is why you can enhance existing snowstorms to increase the water supply in one area, and then essentially capture that water for use later. And so there are technologies that are being developed for warm weather cloud seeding, and I believe you can do that in a place like Texas, where you could increase the amount of rain that falls, but you would need existing clouds in order to do that, which is why this is one part of many components to the solution to the water problem.
So don't misinterpret, or I'm not trying to put words into your mouth. I'm trying to get a clarification here. So is it possible to borrow clouds from other areas to do this? You know what I mean?
No. Yes.
Like you could grow the cloud technically in one state and then just use the jet streams to kind of move them in the places they need to go.
What you could do, though, for the Rio Grande Valley is that all that water is coming from the mountains in Colorado, right? So what you could do is do cloud seeding in a place like Colorado, increase the amount of snow that is going into the Rio Grande River in Colorado and in New Mexico. And then that would increase the amount of water that's available for places like the Rio Grande Valley. So that's one part of the solution.
Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
You said that China has been very big in this. Number one, what are they doing and where? And is there anybody else besides China that's big into this?
Yeah, sure. So China's they announced a couple of years ago that they wanted to create enough new water with cloud seeding to meet about 10% of their country's water consumption, and that's just orders of magnitude greater than what the U.S. has done. And they're doing that primarily in their desert regions that need more water, right? Similar to how Utah is a dry region compared to the rest of the U.S. And they've been able to do all kinds of crazy applications with it, even use cloud seeding to reduce the amount of hail that's dropped in some area to improve crop yields. And so China is doing this. We know that there's a few other countries that are doing this. The Middle East has invented some ways to do it. I think Israel is a leader in cloud seeding as well. But I'm interested in the U.S. becoming a leader in this application and using it as part of a solution to create more water abundance, to create more wetlands for us, more lakes, and more water that we can use for all kinds of purposes.
I think it's kind of fascinating that, say, 2 decades ago, it was a conspiracy theory that the government could control the weather. But now we're in a situation where we're praying that the government controls the weather so that we can get some rain around these here parts. Tell us a little bit more about the American Conservation Coalition.
Sure. So American Conservation Coalition, our mission is to build the conservative environmental movement. And so we're young conservatives across the country, of about 70,000 members. And what we believe is that we want an environmentalism that builds things, that produces more amount of resources, and that's ultimately in the American interest. And so what I'm interested in is, not having an environmentalism where you have people gluing themselves to roads to protest climate change, but one where we're inventing technologies for the solutions,
Right. This actually works.
Can't we just leave them glued?
Coming up with ideas is much more productive than throwing a can of paint on the Mona Lisa.
Can't we just leave them glued to the road? I mean, They'll eventually get free.
You know, I'd like to think we can convince some of them to join us in getting some of the solutions. But for some folks, it's too far gone.
I would love that. Hey, Isaiah, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Appreciate it. That's Isaiah Menning, External Affairs Director at the American Conservation Coalition, part of Young Voices, joining us on Newstalk 710 KURV.